In this video, we'll show you what would happen if Demon King Tanjiro fought Muzan. We also separate them into two categories, Demon King Tanjiro versus Poison Muzan, and him against full-powered Muzan. Again, before we start, we need to answer one simple question. How does Tanjiro even become a demon in the first place? Well, here's why. In a separate timeline, the Hashiras are down and Tanjiro is on his last breaths fighting Muzan. As the fight comes to a close, Muzan will most likely mock Tanjiro and as a final insult will inject his blood into him. But we all know where this is going, right? Yes, everything doesn't go as planned. And instead of Tanjiro dying a horrible death or becoming his minion, Muzan gave birth to a monster that is beyond his imagination. Now that that's done, let's start off with the first scenario. What would happen if Demon King Tanjiro fought Muzan after he was poisoned by Tamayo? For the sake of the story, there won't be any other characters involved, and it's just a 1v1. They're going to fight at night, and Muzan can't use his blood to control or hurt Tanjiro because that would be an auto win for Muzan. So let's analyze our fighters. Just how strong is Demon King Tanjiro? Well, we didn't see a lot of Demon King Tanjiro, and he quickly disappeared and didn't deal that much damage. But what we can say is that he was potentially the strongest demon in all of Demon Slayer's history. But why? Well, Tanjiro is immune to sunlight, something that Muzan couldn't even achieve. And since no one else knows sun breathing, he's basically immortal. But what about his blood demon art and fighting style? Well, Tanjiro's blood demon art is just like Muzan's as well, which is biokinesis, where he can manipulate his body and flesh. He also uses a short to mid-range fighting style. So what's the difference between him and Muzan? Well, it's because Tanjiro has knowledge of sun breathing. If Tanjiro came to his senses and accepted being a demon, then he would basically be like Kokushibo and Muzan mixed together and on steroids. But what about Muzan? Well, if you've read the manga, especially the final battle in the Infinity Castle, Muzan's strength is nothing to laugh at. Even if he was weakened by Tamayo's poison, he went on to massacre hundreds of demon slayers and fended off the strongest Hashiras. His abilities include the whips just like Tanjiro's, infinite regeneration, unlimited stamina, biokinesis, genius intellect, and a shockwave energy blast. But I know what you're thinking. All of those are just like Tanjiro's skills. Well, Muzan has one thing that may put him at an advantage, and that's his battle IQ and experience. With all the fighters set, we can finally answer the question, who will win in a fight between Demon King Tanjiro and a weakened Muzan? Well, the fight would go like this. Just as Tanjiro transforms into a demon, he'll go berserk just like he did in the original manga. Tanjiro would go ahead and fight Muzan head-on, charging like a wild beast. Muzan can then easily predict his movements and pull off a counterattack that might cut off every limb Tanjiro has. And take note, Muzan's still in his base Michael Jackson form, so will it be that easy? Well, not so much. Because just like Muzan, Demon King Tanjiro has overpowered regeneration. As the fight drags on, it'll be a battle of pure stamina and will, where Muzan might feel like he's duking it out with nothing more than a mindless demon. But everything ends there. So what would be the trigger for such a drastic turn of events? Well, everything would change if and only if Tanjiro gains consciousness and breaks free from his berserk state. When this happens, the fight will definitely take a turn for the worse for Muzan. Tanjiro would just be like Kokushibo, an overpowered demon swordsmith, but multiply that to 100. Remember, Tanjiro knows sun breathing, and not only that, he accessed a transparent world and Demon Slayer mark, so now he has Yoriichi and Muzan's abilities without both their weaknesses, old age, and the sun. But does Muzan just lose from here on? Well, Muzan would still put up a fight, especially if he activates his combat form. In the manga, Tanjiro wasn't as fast as Muzan, especially since even Gyu had time to save the others before Tanjiro killed them with his whips. So Muzan has speed and battle IQ, while Tanjiro has firepower and durability. Muzan could potentially use his advantages to quickly immobilize Tanjiro before he could adjust to his current state, but how would he deal the killing blow? Well, that's one question that Muzan won't get an answer to. In chapter 202 of the manga, both Yushiro and Gyu acknowledge that because of Tanjiro's resistance to sunlight and his potential to evolve, he's practically immortal because even bright red Nichiren swords aren't effective against him. Now that Tanjiro can't be killed, how will the battle end? Well, once Tanjiro gets used to his demonic form, Poison Muzan is probably going to go down. Human Tanjiro was no match for Muzan in a 1v1, but now with his increased speed and strength, decapitating Muzan would be no problem at all. However, there might be something more interesting that has a higher chance of happening. Instead of relying on his Demon Slayer techniques, Tanjiro might choose to use his newfound demonic abilities because he still can't use his body properly to execute breathing styles. But you might see him using that in the next scenario. This fight would be a lot more entertaining, and instead of decapitating, Muzan would just be sliced up into bits. Tanjiro could just slash him using his whips out of existence. But is that enough? Well, even if Muzan regenerates, Tanjiro has unlimited stamina and can just keep Muzan immobilized until the sun comes up. In the end, Muzan will be disintegrated and there will be a new Demon King that'll wreak havoc in the world of Demon Slayer. Now, Poison Muzan wasn't nearly as strong as him in his prime, but he was still able to put up a fight against Tanjiro. But now, what would happen if Demon King Tanjiro fought a full-powered Muzan? Would there be any difference, and could Muzan turn the tables? Well, let's go ahead and take a look. In this current fight, there will be a lot of similarities with the first scenario, but there will be some major differences as well, so keep watching to find out. One of the major differences in this scenario is that Muzan wasn't poisoned by Tamayo and is feeling the best he's ever been. But what difference would this make? Well, Muzan would be faster and stronger. His regeneration would be even more effective, and most of all, his blood demon art would be more powerful. What about Tanjiro? Well, Tanjiro will start off more or less the same, going berserk and having the same abilities as mentioned before. So what would happen in this battle? Well, to start things off, Tanjiro would do the same things he did in the first scenario, by charging Muzan head on, and Muzan just countering his every move, but this time, Muzan's attacks are deadlier and cause more damage. Moving past that, what would Tanjiro do if he came to his senses? Well, this is when things become interesting, and this is the key difference in both scenarios. As Tanjiro comes to his senses, he'll also try to rely on his demon powers because he still hasn't gotten used to his new body, but instead of Muzan getting beaten, Tanjiro would just get absolutely demolished by Muzan. Why? Well, Muzan without being weakened is a different beast of his own. In the Demon Slayer's second fan book, it was said that Muzan's mastery of his own blood demon art is so advanced that he can create puppets of flesh and command them. Now, we didn't see that in the original series, and it might be because of Tamayo's poison, but he could definitely use that now. With Muzan going all out in his combat form, Tanjiro, while only using his demon powers, would likely stand no chance and just get beaten to a pulp. If it wasn't for his insane regeneration, Tanjiro would have died more than a dozen times by now. So how could Tanjiro turn the tables on Muzan? Well, we've mentioned it before that it's happening now. Tanjiro will likely use sun breathing and his other Demon Slayer techniques after he has some time to adjust. Sun breathing is the only breathing style that can severely damage Muzan, where when it was used by Yurichi, he was able to burn Muzan to a cellular level. Not only that, the transparent world also allows Tanjiro to predict Muzan's movements, and instead of wildly attacking, he can use both his sun breathing and blood demon art to effectively attack Muzan. But will Muzan get beaten again just like that? Well, not quite. You see, Muzan, when he was poisoned, was biologically aged over 9,000 years, and now he's in tip-top shape. He'll have more ways to use his blood demon art other than clones and whips, unlike in the original series. Just like he did in the Lower Moon meeting, Muzan will most likely transform his body parts, as well as that of his clones, into some horrific monsters to outnumber Tanjiro and match his firepower. You might even see around 3 to 5 combat form Muzans all trying to fight Tanjiro at once. So will Muzan finally get a win? Well, sorry to say Muzan simps, but Tanjiro mentioned before is basically immortal. No matter what Muzan throws at him, he can simply regenerate and fight back. Tanjiro, especially with his 13th form of sun breathing, is in a league of his own, while Muzan can barely be damaged by the sun breathing, and when most of his 7 hearts and 5 brains are destroyed, he'll be weakened. But you might think Muzan escaped Yurichi, then he can escape Tanjiro. Well, Muzan escaped Yurichi because Yurichi was talking to Tamayo, and now that Tanjiro's locked onto him, even if he splits himself into over 1,000 pieces, he can still be caught. In the end, Muzan will be defeated once again, and there are 2 ways he can die. First is that he'll be killed by sun breathing after Tanjiro will dice him up into a cellular level. Or the other way is just like the first scenario. Tanjiro will immobilize him so he'll die by the sunlight. So that's it for what would happen if Demon King Tanjiro and Muzan fought. It's a 2-0 score, and Tanjiro would have a horrifying villain to fight if not for Kano and Nezuko. But before you click away, have you ever wondered what would happen if Yurichi fought Demon King Tanjiro? Well, check it out in our next video.